Hello and welcome back to the Sports and Then Some podcast. I am Carson and I'm joined here with my father.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here again.
See, I've taken host privileges this week, so I have all the power now.
Yeah.
I get to decide. Our infinite power with all 3, maybe 2.5 viewers.
Good job, Thanos.
Yeah, I like to round up. So,
I am the one with an alcoholic drink, though.
Yeah.
Unlike you.
Which is why I have the power.
There better not be alcohol in that cup.
Do you want to
No,
smell it?
I'm going to trust that it's not.
Yeah, you can trust me on that.
Okay.
All right, so do we want to begin our opening drives now?
Sure.
Who wants to go first?
I don't
we can
care.
play rock, paper, scissors.
Well, you have the
for
power. Would you like to go first?
I'll
you
let
want me
you
to
go
first?
first.
Okay, good.
Since I have the power.
I got one. And this is, Carson and I live in the Memphis area. We're Grizzly fans. However, as a fan of the NBA, I'm going to say it like this. I am so sick and tired of hearing people, even during this coronavirus pandemic, try to make a debate out of Rookie of the Year. Oh my God. I do not want to hear one more time about Zion's stats and what the 2 to 15 games he played before he got shut down. I mean, Ja Morant wasn't putting up 35 points a game. He's a rookie. What he was doing is getting a team that nobody in this town expected to be in a playoff
push. Any town.
And if you'd have told me, hey, they're in 10th place in the West at this point in the year when they stopped games, I would have been like, no way. But they're in the 8, which of course is going to find some way to hose them up.
They're trying to push us out.
Yeah,
already.
when they do the restart. So this is my drive, okay? So let me talk.
I have the power, though, so
no,
I
not
can
really.
stop you.
Okay, so anyway, to sum it up, ESPN and other news outlets are just trying so hard because the league wants it this way, to be like, Zion. I agree. He's a unique talent. He's also 6'6" to 6'8", and he's going to basically be a center for his career. So okay, fine. That has nothing. That is not as germane to the Rookie of the Year debate. That means even less in that debate. Ja Morant, he basically took this team to another level, a level that nobody thought they were going to get to. And I don't want to hear any more about Zion. Well, he only played this many games, but if you average it out per 36 minutes and over a game, a season. Bullshit. I don't want to hear it. He didn't play. I mean, it sucks for him that he got hurt. I really do. I say that. And if he'd played all these same games that Ja did, he might be in the lead for Rookie of the Year. We don't know. But hey, that's the way it goes. And guess what? Ja has had a better overall season than he has. And Zion should not even be eligible in my estimation. If I was a New Orleans fan, I might sit here and go, well, no, you can't say that. Zion's the Rookie of the Year. Bullshit. Ja Morant is Rookie of the Year. I don't care how many games they come back and play. I don't care who ends up making it out of this, what will end up being a bullshit screw the Grizzlies playoff scenario, and find some way to get the Pelicans in so we can put at least 3 games of Zion on there against LeBron and make it like, oh, look at this debate.
Those Pelicans aren't beating the Lakers in a single game.
No.
There's no way. No,
so that's my take, hot take.
I want to throw one thing into there. So one of the main factors for people trying to put Zion as the Rookie of the Year is, the Pelicans have been better than the Grizzlies since Zion came back. This is a tweet from the great Zachary Palmer. This is the record.
Friend of the podcast.
Yeah,
he's not a journalist.
Listen, this is the records of the Grizzlies and Pelicans since January 22nd, which is the day Zion debuted. New Orleans 11-9. .550 win percentage, so 55% win percentage.
Okay.
Memphis 12-10, 54.5 win percentage, .545.
Yeah, so it's basically the same.
The exact same. And we've been winning the entire season. They were winning almost more when Zion wasn't the lead on that team, when Brandon Ingram was leading, because he's a better player. So.
Well, the last thing we can say about that is also, had the season played out, and Carson and I looked at all the remaining Grizzly games on the calendar from the original schedule, and I had heard, the Grizzlies have a much tougher schedule down the stretch than New Orleans. It's a joke. The comparison is a joke. it's almost like the league said, "Yes, we got it right where we want
Well,
it."
of course they gave them an easier second half because that's what really matters. Like if your last 41 games are easier than their first 41, you only need to take half your first 41 games. So,
I mean, to me, it's. I'll make a side point about the Grizzlies, which I know this one would not happen because, at best, they're still going to be like an 8 seed if they get in the playoffs, but whatever the playoffs look like. But I would say I think it's a travesty that at least not some buzz for Taylor Jenkins to get Coach of the Year consideration. I mean, it's to do what he's doing with that team. I mean, there have been a lot of players on that team because we obviously watch more Grizzly games than the average person. I mean, there's players on that team that have just flat overachieved, and
Zach Kleiman for Executive of the Year.
Yeah,
he should be considered.
When I'm referring to some of the guys that they jettisoned that we knew they would, the Solomon Hills and Jay Crowders of the team. I mean, those guys gave immediate contributions, and I mean, we thought they were, especially once you got past Jay Crowder, we're like, oh, it's a bag of donuts. I mean, and people like Tyus Jones and people like that who, I mean, they're having career years. Is that all coaching? No, but coaching has some say in it, especially with the young team, and that's my drive. We're going way over.
Another guy like Valanciunas, who's
thriving in this system.
Was underrated so badly his entire career, and then comes and explodes. Like he's a double. He's basically Zebo, and just a little bit different.
And your boy King Kleiman signed him to an extremely manageable 3-year deal.
Zach Kleiman should be Executive of the Year. His signings, his drafting, everything, and he's only been GM for like a year, barely a year, I think.
And honestly, I hope whatever happens, I hope he validates another thing that people, in more cases than not, across the NBA pundit circles, panned as a bad deal. I hope Justice Winslow comes out and puts up 40 a game for the first 5 games and shuts them all up. Because now that he's healthy, I mean, he wants to get back and show it.
He was awesome last year when he played point guard for the Heat. And if we let him be like a point forward role for us, he could be just as spectacular. I mean, he was scoring over like 20 points a game for like 10 games straight, I think. It was something crazy.
On our team, he doesn't have to be the 1. He can be the 2 or the 3.
He can be anything. I mean, he can
you interchange him, and also it lights a fire to me under Dylan Brooks' ass to quit putting up so many bad shots. Yeah. I love Dylan to no end. I love his story. His biggest problem is shot selection. And if Winslow can go out there and be efficient, especially, I mean, then you look at Dylan and say, hey, dude.
Yeah. I think those two could play together.
I completely agree.
I mean, we could have the Grizzlies could have their starting 5 for the next year set with Ja at the 1, Dylan at the 2, Winslow at the 3, if he plays well, Jaren at the 4, and Valanciunas at the 5. I mean, this team is already set up for the future. So,
and you've got a couple of super subs coming off the bench.
Like Tyus Jones, like you said earlier. I mean, he was awesome this year.
Yep, exactly. And our steal of the draft. At pick 21.
Oh, yes. I completely forgot about
Brandon Clark him?
For a second.
Come on.
I forgot about our pogo stick athlete.
Yeah. Okay. My drive went way over. What's yours?
Yeah. My drive is, it's a couple different things. First off, I want to talk about something from Double or Nothing. So at Double or Nothing, it was kind of the first time they unveiled the TNT Championship belt in AEW.
Oh, my God.
And I just want to talk about how
a travesty.
Ugly that belt is. Like, come on.
It's not ugly if you're 6 years old and buying it from the toy store.
Exactly. I made this joke when we were watching Double or Nothing last Saturday. It looks like you bought it out of the back of Cracker Barrel. Like, it looks like you walk back there with those little cranes that you pick stuff up with. You see that thing back there. That's what it looks like.
I mean, I'll give like Carson props. We were watching that with friend of the podcast, Brian, and Carson made that comment, and that was a true LMAO moment for me. So I've trained him well.
Yeah. You've done a good job. Yeah. And also, I have a good thing to rant about from Double or Nothing also. Right. Please, AEW, do more things like the Stadium Stampede. Anything, awesome. Please do more like that. AEW has shown that they can be creative, and that was beyond creative. It was just pure awesomeness. Every part of it. I mean, just every single piece of it was amazing.
I mean, I'll throw in that, there's a lady that I work with sometimes who is, she's in her late 20s and she's into wrestling, and she made the comment about watching it, which her being into wrestling already makes me go, yeah, she's cool. But she said when Hangman came out on that horse, she said, I just about flipped my lid. She's like, I loved it. I said, yes.
He's
watching
finally
Guevara
back.
run from that
horse.
horse.
Then they came after him with a golf cart again, and then to end it, the one-winged angel off of the stands into.
And of course, Kenny O's the crazy one to do it
because he always has to hurt himself doing stupid stuff.
I'm surprised there weren't barbed wire and live snakes down there too.
Well, there's no Moxley out there to help him with that, so
yeah.
Well, there was a live snake at Double or Nothing.
Well,
Jake the Snake brought out his live snake until Mike Tyson ripped off his shirt
and told him to get lost.
Yeah. So Double or Nothing was great though. That's
good wrestling coverage there.
Yeah.
Good double duty. Okay. Good drive.
All right.
Just like the golf cart driven by broken Matt Hardy.
Yeah. My favorite comment was, "Drive it faster, Matt. Go, get him."
Yes.
From Kenny Omega sitting in the passenger seat. So
as Matt Hardy's going, I am doing it.
Yeah.
I'm Damascus.
I wish Abraham Lincoln had showed up in the stands though.
I wish
help
he had
out
teleported out of the cart
in front of
clothesline Guevara.
Yeah. There was no teleporting, but there was some shifting between different eras of Matt Hardy underwater.
That was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So okay, cool. What else you got on the slate there, Master of Ceremonies? What's next?
Should we talk some wrestling, building off of Double or Nothing?
Well, yeah, a little bit.
What were your thoughts of Double or Nothing as a whole?
I thought for the most part it was really good. I will say, in referencing backwards a little bit to, I believe it was Raw, WWE Raw before that, on that Monday night before, and they had plexiglassed the walkway in the Performance Center, but had put a bunch of the NXT trainees, I guess, out there. That's the way they kept describing them, as trainees. And it looked like they were truly
NXT people and some that were just not actually wrestlers.
Right. It looked like they were trying to take a page out of AEW, which I've said AEW, I think that's one thing they've gotten right all along, which is it's fine to have, 20 people in there who you've screened. They've all tested. They're all part of the group.
Yeah, most of them are wrestlers themselves.
They're in there hollering and having a good time with it. And I thought that, Double or Nothing was no exception. It was fun. They actually had, it seemed like a few more people out there.
Well, and then this week on Dynamite, they had a significantly higher number of people also.
Yeah, exactly.
With masks on now, so they can have more people out there, I guess.
Well, and your boy Henry Cajudo coming out with Iron Mike. Was that your favorite moment?
I don't know. I mean, this past week's Dynamite was actually really good, building off of the success of Double or Nothing. One thing that was exciting on AEW was the Revival. Well, formerly known as the Revival, now they're known as F the Revolt, which is that's their new tag
team. And they have a
name.
shirt that is
good
F***CK the Revolt.
Excellent.
So, it's like you're not getting that shirt either.
Yeah, so basically there's been a Twitter war between them and the Young Bucks, like a fake, they need to battle. It's been like a dream tag team battle for a long time now for wrestling fans between the Young Bucks and the Revival, or FTR now. So I guess that feud is going to happen sooner rather than later, hopefully.
So, yeah, I mean, my sum up thoughts on Double or Nothing, just about everything was great. I loved the Stadium Stampede. I actually really enjoyed the Hikaru Shida Nyla Rose match, which I didn't think I was going to, but watching them slam each other down on giant poker chips and stuff like that was awesome. I think that's actually also prompted WWE to put Nia Jax more in the spotlight, because they're like, oh look, it's a larger lady. And people are responding to it. We need to put her through a table like they did on SmackDown.
And then she got up and still won a triple threat match.
Yeah, big shocker there. But
any woman over a certain weight limit is automatically a destruction machine in wrestling.
Yeah. The only thing I would have changed about Double or Nothing, which I liked simultaneously and didn't like, was I love the introduction of Brian Cage. I don't like that he won the chip. I'm not saying... It seems obvious that they're married to the idea of people... Some of their bigger guys like Luchasaurus being a tag team guy. And
then they have some big guys who are made for...
I mean, Lance Archer and
Brody Lee
are kind of like your two monsters right now.
And
so
now
I get you need to insert another monster to liven it up. I just would have preferred they not shoot him straight to the top of it. I mean, that's what it seems like it's going to be.
I think that him coming in and not winning... But actually, he showed his dominance from the very beginning. I mean, picking people up, just throwing them around like they were nothing. I think him coming in and dominating that match, but losing in the end, would have been a lot better. Because you could have given the chip and a shot at the title to someone a little bit more established on the roster. I understand Brian Cage is a very popular coming from Impact, but I think someone that they've been building up, like a homegrown talent from AEW, would have been better. I personally would have given it to Darby Allin because I think a feud between him and Moxley would have been really fun to watch. Two guys who constantly put their body on the line just for no reason.
Darby Allin has put up. I mean, he's done his chops against both Jericho and Cody.
Yeah, I mean, he's fought big names, so I think it would have made more sense for him to go after Moxley. I mean, I'm sure there's a title push coming for him at some point, maybe against Cody for the TNT Championship, because honestly, I don't see Cody holding it for that long. Because
he always seems to get his ass kicked.
Apparently, he's devoted to the idea of building up other people instead of himself. So,
well, he does a good job then of that.
Yeah.
I credit him. Okay, what else?
In wrestling, well, speaking of new people being added, since we were talking about Brian Cage and the Revival, back to WWE, Matt Riddle was officially called up to SmackDown this past week. It was made official. There were rumors from Dave Meltzer pretty much confirming that he would be called up at some point in the next month. But it's pretty soon. I'm guessing he'll be there next week. I'm wondering if he'll make an appearance on NXT this week to oh, look, I'm leaving now. But apparently there's also, due to ratings being down because of the coronavirus, McMahon's looking to shake things up on the main roster, adding, a good amount of NXT people. So some of the people that I heard on the short list were Velveteen Dream, Chelsea Green, Io Shirai, and Dominik Dijakovic. Now, one name, obviously, that you and I would like to see that's missing from that short list is Tommaso Ciampa.
Yes.
But it appears at this time that he's one of the guys that they want to keep down to help build NXT more. So
his check better be expanded as a result.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
I mean, he's one of the... But, I mean, him and guys like Keith Lee have to, I guess, stay down to keep some, sort of consistency in NXT. I also heard that the Undisputed Era might all be coming up sooner rather than later. So
and that's that part I don't like. I think they've got enough tag teams going on.
Well, that's a 4-man team.
When I've heard people say, like wrestlers say, not people I know personally. I've heard people say that McMahon actually he prefers singles type wrestlers. He's never been a huge tag team guy.
Obviously, the Raw tag team division is kind of a joke right now. Literally, the Viking Raiders and Street Profits, two of the best tag teams on Raw, are doing some random. I mean, it's funny, but
well, if
it's
that's
not
the case,
really...
though, then why promote all these people to SmackDown?
I don't know. A lot of
SmackDown's
them
the weaker product overall right now, but they could use a couple new tag teams.
I think that's part of the reason why Forgotten Sons were called up, because the Usos are going to be gone for 6 to 9 months. I mean, Jay showed up, but I think Jimmy is the one who's injured.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
Jay was in the 10-man Battle Royale on SmackDown, so it was nice to see him. But the Usos, it's apparent that they're missing because they're a huge part of the SmackDown tag team roster. So
right. Okay. What else? Or do you want to move on?
Unless you have anything else to say. I mean, yeah, pretty much Double or Nothing was great. Dynamite built well off it. Tyson showed back up on Dynamite, so that was exciting.
Yeah.
And
with the faux fight with Tyson and your boy from UFC.
Cejudo. And then there were a bunch of other, apparently, MMA people that I did not recognize.
Yeah, so there were 3 of them in his posse.
I mean, and then Jericho, of course, had one MMA fighter on his side, and Jake Hager.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
anyway.
that's pretty much it for now. I mean, Backlash is coming up in a couple weeks. I'm sure we'll talk about that once it happens. So.
Yep. What's next on your list?
Next, in sports news, we were going to talk about the NBA and NHL's proposed plans for playing, which they are probably the two that are furthest along right now since the MLB.
Yeah, good job, MLB.
Yeah, thanks for ruining it.
Here's $5.
Yeah.
Complain about it to each other.
Literally, it was... I heard that a player who would be making $35 million this year in the MLB would make $8 million. That's how much they cut salary. You really think the players are going to accept that? Risk their health for that? Like, I don't. It's just stupid.
Well, not to get down that rabbit hole, but the $35 million player is clearly not thinking about the league minimum guy.
Well, yeah,
who's
I know.
Back end of the
but I'm
bench
just saying that
roster guy.
If they cut by $20 million almost for that guy, imagine how much they're cutting for the guys who are making $1 million. I mean, how much money?
Which means he's going to be making $200,000 or nothing.
Exactly.
I'd rather make $200,000. I also wouldn't want to expand it up to 100+ games like the players went back with. That's clearly another. I mean, I get their position. They deserve to be highly compensated. However, how much is enough?
Yeah, I mean, it's either they make $0 or, like you said, like a portion of what they usually make.
If MLB, I mean, think about it this way: you're into MLB at your age. A lot of people your age are not into MLB. If MLB, I mean, it's not their fault. The coronavirus is nobody's fault right now at this point. I don't know that it's ever going to be anybody's fault. If MLB is gone for an entire year, how many fans your age are they going to lose that they have? You'll go back to it. There's other kids your age that probably are somewhat into it. They won't go back because they'll be like, oh, there's that sport again. Wow. Do I want to sit and watch for 3.5 hours a June 21st game against Seattle against the Twins? But means nothing because they're both 500 or less? No. I mean, they're not going to watch that. I mean, when I was your age, I would sit and turn those on, but they were sort of background noise. I won't even do that now. And I know people your age won't. They'd rather they'll go play it on the PlayStation, but that's because they're controlling it.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, this is boring, and turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, it's dangerous for a sport that has maybe a smaller but more devoted fan base to take a whole season away from their fans. That just seems dangerous to me.
Which is why the NHL knows they can't stop.
Yeah.
They need to come back.
Now, NBA and
I think
NFL,
the NHL fan base is more rabid, but still.
Yeah. The NBA and NFL could probably survive a year completely away.
They could, but they don't want to.
Definitely.
Money-wise, they don't.
Yeah. The NFL could definitely. The NBA could most likely, but the other two...
well, the only thing they wouldn't survive is the dollars.
Yeah, they
need
the money.
But reputationally, they would all survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. MLB, it'll still be around, but, I mean, it's, when normal sports are going, I mean, I've gotten to the point where, I mean, granted, I'm in my mid-40s, but I've gotten to the point where if an MLB game was on, like, right now, and I was flipping channels, and it's MLB is on, it's Cleveland versus Milwaukee, in an interleague game. Like, oh, those two pretty good teams usually the last few years. Interleague game. Oh, there's also, this other thing going on. There's a cornhole tournament going on. I can honestly say I would probably flip between both of them, if not just flip over to cornhole. Because it's shorter. To me, it's more immediate, and there aren't a shit ton of commercial breaks.
Now, I think one thing that was helping baseball, they had actually gotten a decent amount of momentum, making the league more exciting because of the home run surge that there was last year. I honestly think that would bring more people back to watching the sport because it makes it more exciting. But the thing is that they lose that momentum now.
Yeah.
They're screwed.
Just like I told you before, the strike in '94.
Mm-hmm. They had momentum off of the most home runs ever hit in a year, and they come back and they're just not going to play this year. Like you can't do that. Like it's just stupid. Now,
so anyway, I took us off on MLB.
Yeah.
But, which one do you want to do first, NHL or NBA?
So I guess I'll talk about the NBA one first, since we kind of hit on that earlier. Now, in both of these, I think that our teams are getting screwed. The Predators and the Grizzlies are both getting
like
screwed.
Full disclosure, we're rabid Preds and Grizzlies fans.
Yeah, they're getting screwed over in both of these. Now, the NBA's hasn't been confirmed, I don't think, fully. It's supposed to be confirmed, like, this week. It would basically be like a 22-team plan that would include teams that are currently within 6 games of the final playoff spots in each conference. So that's going to
I didn't even see that clause.
Yeah.
So that basically puts one team from the East who's not in the playoffs right
Washington.
now. Yeah, the Wizards.
Who are kind of terrible. Bradley Beal is going to kill himself.
5 teams in the West?
5, yes.
So that would be Portland, the Spurs, New Orleans, Sacramento, and who am I missing?
San Antonio. Oh, wait, no, you said.
Yeah.
It's New Orleans, Phoenix.
Phoenix is the one
Portland, Sacramento, and San Antonio. So basically,
good job, Lillard. Way to bitch your way into
all
it.
of those teams have a shot at beating the Grizzlies. Because the Grizzlies, I think, are a really good team this year. But all these teams have dangerous stars. Like Lillard, the Spurs have Popovich.
Too bad he can't suit up for him.
Yeah, I mean, he might be better than some of the players they play.
Well, I'm sure,
Sacramento has players like
it's
De'Aaron
great
Fox.
watching DeMar DeRozan shoot 19-footers all night.
I mean, the thing is, Pop is such a good coach. He transformed their team into a mid-range specialist team with Aldridge and DeRozan, and it works. He made an 80s team work in the 2020.
Such third tier, and he plays the Grizzlies and torches us for some reason. I don't know why he's mad at us.
The league is using this 22-team format as a cover to put the Pelicans in the playoffs.
Describe how it would work first for anybody who hasn't heard it. So who would be playing the play-ins? Who would be set? Is it the top 4 in each conference would be set? Like they're in, and the other.
Yeah, I think what's happening is that they're going to be regular season games with 22 teams.
So they would do a reshuffle of a schedule?
Yeah, I think that I honestly don't fully know because I don't think they fully decided, honestly. Now, there is a 20-team proposal that would cut out Washington and Phoenix.
Yeah,
so
that
it would just be New Orleans, Portland, San Antonio, and Sacramento. And then I think that okay, so this says that there would be several regular season games and a play-in tournament.
Oh, God.
To extra screw over the Grizzlies. So to extra make sure that New Orleans gets in the playoffs. So basically, I think there would be games between the 20 teams that get in to the thing, and then there would be a play-in between probably like the last couple teams to decide who gets those seeds. I don't understand why they can't just do one or the other, or neither. Just play the playoffs right now.
Well, it's I mean, the one that I had heard middle of last week that was at least getting buzz, which I heard it and I was like, it makes total logical sense, but there's no way they're going to go for it. Was the World Cup tournament type format, where you basically took the top
stage.
20 teams and you had a group stage. Or wait, it was the
top 20, yeah. 5
Yeah.
in each group.
Yes. So, and the top 2 in each group would be your 8 teams to basically play the round of 16, which would become the round of 8. It's the quarterfinals, the semis, and the finals. And it would be round robin in each group. I love that proposal because at least it would be no conference affiliation. So it would basically say the Grizzlies and the bottom 4 below, or the 4 below them in the West, would be the ones all in. So Washington, bye, see ya. You suck anyway.
And Phoenix would be gone.
Yes.
Because they're terrible.
They don't belong there.
I don't know why they. But the thing is, the 22-team one is the one that has the most traction. I wonder why. Because you got 2 extra teams that want to support it.
I mean, if I was not a supporter of any team, if I was just an NBA fan, I honestly probably wouldn't care. But the thing that would bother me, which there's no way for the league to control this, so even as a Grizzly fan, I will concede this, is that since these will be neutral site games with at least almost close to nil fans, is that I think that there's some teams that could really, and I don't honestly, even if the Grizzlies made it out of whatever this play-in is going to be, if things held like they were, and the Grizzlies end up playing the Lakers as a first-round playoff matchup, whether it's best of 3, sudden death, best of 5, whatever it is, I don't think it benefits anybody that's like below a 6 seed, except maybe Dallas right now. I mean, because they've got a better team than the Grizzlies. They're just better. But so let's say that would benefit the top 5 in each conference. You know, the Bostons of the world, the Utahs of the world. I think those teams come out of this smelling like a rose more than anybody, because in a neutral site game, first of all, everybody's had a chance except for major injuries to get healthy. So if you take a team like the Jazz or the Celtics or somebody like that, take those as a couple of examples, you know, they have had a chance now to get healthy. And those teams, there's not a ton of separation between them and like a 3 or 4 seed and a 1 seed in either conference. You can say, well, Milwaukee's head and shoulders above it, but no, it doesn't matter. In the playoffs, it's still the playoffs. And teams have figured out ways to shut down Giannis. Not everybody has the personnel to do it, but the method is there. So what I'm saying is, in a neutral site game, these players can't feed off the crowd like they normally can. The coaches can't feed off the crowd like they normally can. So here's an example scenario that I was just throwing around in my mind. And a lot of coaches, you know, think about when you play in a road playoff game. And we've seen, thankfully, our share of road and home playoff games in Memphis out of the last 10 years. In a road playoff game, what happens when, and even take Popovich, because he's like the extreme example in my mind. And they're playing in a road playoff game, what happens when the home team puts up a 6-0 run? Beep, beep, timeout. I'm calling a timeout because I'm going to stem the tide here. So, and part of that is because if you're on the road and the home team starts to get the crowd behind them more, like lit up, you want the crowd to shut up. In a neutral site game, do you change that methodology in your mind? Do you say, I don't care? The bench players can be getting up and popping towels all they want, which is another trend that annoys the shit out of me.
The Grizzlies need to bring back TA for that.
Yeah,
to hype up.
We need him for like fist pumps
and
yells, like first team all defense. But anyway, so it's the players can stand up and pop towels all they want. If you don't have fans in the crowd, I mean, so how are you gonna pipe in crowd noise? Are you gonna have cheers for both teams? You know, one thing that I heard, I think it was on one of Bill Simmons' podcasts, so I'll credit him. And I don't remember if he was doing this from a mailbag question or something, but I think it was. He was saying that somebody had suggested, hey, for teams that are higher seeds or have better records, and I'm simplifying it a bit, but let's take the philosophy of, let's say it's like a second round matchup and it's the Lakers versus, you know, Denver. Take a team that's below them, but is a good team.
Yeah.
So if you said it's a 7-game series, we're in the second round or we're in the conference finals, whatever. The Lakers for games 1 and 2, their PA guy gets to come in and do the game, and their music guys and their sound guys and their promotion guys, whoever you allow in there gets to do it. So every time the Lakers are bringing the ball up the court, they're playing friendly stuff. When the Nuggets are bringing the ball up the court, they're playing whatever they would play at a Lakers game. So it at least feels like, from a noise perspective in that regard, it's like, oh, we're not going to do the Nuggets any favors in games 1 and 2 because the Lakers guy is there. And then in games 3 and 4, you bring in the Nuggets guys.
If you bring in the Grizzlies announcer, it won't do us much help.
Well, I agree. It's terrible. If only we could bring back the old crew, but we won't go into that. Yeah. It's messy.
Unfortunately.
So anyway, my final thoughts on the scenarios is that from a casual NBA perspective, I don't care as long as they bring it back. From a Grizzly fan homer perspective, I think it's absolutely ludicrous to say that we're just going to say, oh, we're just going to play 5 games or 10 games. And let the chips fall where they may.
And we'll play the Lakers twice in those regular season games.
I mean, the only thing that you could say that would be fair in that regard to me is if you round robin everybody. Everybody plays every team once. If you do that, or really twice, but you don't have time to do that. And if it's 22 teams, you don't have time for 21 games either. Because if you're going to do that, you might as well just bring them all back and play the rest of the season the way it was. So I'm sure there's going to be something they do, like you play all the teams in your conference that are there once, but that's not even because, again, we'd have, in this scenario, 5 teams from the West who aren't in the playoffs and 1 from the East. So I think it has to work like a play-in for it to be fair from the beginning, or you just need to say, like you said, it's the 16 that are there, and that's it. But they won't do that because they don't want some of the current teams that are there now.
Yeah, they'll randomize it with quotation marks for the schedule probably, and the Grizzlies will play the Lakers twice, the Nuggets, the Mavericks, the Jazz.
Throw in a Bucks game.
They'll throw in the Wizards once. Then they'll give us a Spurs game, 2 Pelicans game, both in New Orleans.
Well, they're not going to be in New Orleans. It'll all be in Orlando or wherever. I hear you though. This is why I loved the World Cup format.
The group stage.
Because the 2 ways you could do that is you could either snake it, where the 1, 2, 3, 4 are the group leaders for groups A through D, and now you snake it. So now the 4 and now the 5 goes in group D with number 4, and 6, 7, 8. So number 8 is in with 1, and now 9 is in with 1. You see what I
bet
mean?
What happened is that the top 4 teams in each conference said absolutely no to that.
Oh, sure they did.
Because
Well,
you think the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Jazz are going to say, yeah, let's do that. Let's screw ourselves over in a group stage. Because all it takes is one team to get hot and beat them, and they're out in the group stage.
Well, because there was either that or there was the proposal to say the top 4 teams are the lead in a group. And then after that, it's totally randomized, which is what the World Cup does, which is how you end up with Group E can be called the group of death sometimes. It's like, the United States has been in the group of death, I think, once or twice in the last 30 years in World Cup. But you could have a group in the World Cup where it's Brazil, Argentina, Spain, and England. Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is hosed because they're not going to win those games. And then you have another group that's Trinidad and Tobago, the Ivory Coast, Nigeria,
and England.
And England is basically expected to walk through the group. They don't always do it, but they usually do. But that's the way it is, and teams know that coming in. So it's, anyway. What's your final thoughts on that?
On what they should do, or what I?
Yeah, what would you say is the best approach?
I think that coming from a Grizzlies standpoint, I would like the group stage because that would at least give us a chance to technically be in the playoffs, even instead of just screwing us over and basically kicking us out of the playoffs, which is what's going to happen in the 22 or 20 team playoffs or play-in or whatever they're going to do. They're going to try and kick out the Grizzlies and put the Pelicans in. That's been their plan all along. All they want is the Pelicans in the playoffs so they can say, Zion did it, everybody. Zion brought the Pelicans to the playoffs. Everybody, look, he's Rookie of the Year. And then they'll hand him Rookie of the Year and say, he brought them to the playoffs. He's Rookie of the Year. Congrats, Zion.
But here would be an example. If you did snake format and you threw out conferences and you said based on record and standing, here is how snake format groups would work. So Group A would be the Bucks are the top in Group A. So if you snake formatted them, then your next 4 teams in that group would be the Heat, the Thunder, and hang on, I'm scrolling down. Then it would look like it would be, hang on, bear with me a sec. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Thunder. Then it would be, the last 2 teams would be Orlando and Portland in that group. So you look at that and say, that's probably a pretty easy group for Milwaukee. They should win that group. But here's the flip side. So now if you say Group D, who's 4th best record? That's the Clippers. So now that group is The Clippers and the Celtics are the first two teams in that group. So then your next teams are, and this is where it gets really fun. The next two teams in that group, the Sixers and the Mavericks. Would that be the group of death? I don't care who's the last team in there. To me, that's the group of death.
Whoever's the last team is that is getting hosed, because it's probably like San Antonio or the Grizzlies. You know they wouldn't put the Pelicans in that one. They put the Pelicans in the easiest one.
Yeah, would be someone like, that'd be like the Spurs.
Because I think in that group, the only team that's guaranteed to get through in that group is the Clippers. I think that the Celtics could get beat. I think the Sixers could get beat because they're overrated. I think that
well, sure, but
the Mavericks,
they're not an easy out.
Yeah, but the Mavericks could easily come up and win that. Could easily come up and be one of the two teams out of that group.
Yeah, so
Luka just goes off 2 games, wins them, and the rest is history after that.
So moving on, NHL.
Yeah, so basically the NHL has, I think they've approved it already, like completely.
This is the 24 team.
Yeah, the 24 team. Crap.
The top 4 are in? Or
the top 4 in each conference are guaranteed a playoff spot. The bottom 4 teams in each playoffs and the next 4 teams going on to the 12th seed in each conference have to do a play-in tournament. Yeah.
Yep.
So 5 would be playing 12. So Pittsburgh would have to play Montreal, which they were being babies, and so it's a best of 5 because teams like Pittsburgh thought that X factors like Carey Price would be too dangerous in a best of 3.
I'm so sick of the Penguins bitching about everything.
Well, and then there was one team, whoever would be playing, the Oilers would be playing the Blackhawks. They said Patrick Kane was too much of an X factor in the playoffs because he has a good playoff record. So, but basically the Predators got screwed over because we are playing the Coyotes, who would have a much better record, but they made a midseason acquisition of Taylor Hall. And I think if he'd been playing with them the entire season, their record would be much better. Now, of course, we couldn't get the Wild, whose number we have down. We beat the Wild every single time because we have this vendetta against Ryan Suter, and we always destroy the Wild. But no, we get the Coyotes by, it looks like 2 games.
They could be 170 and 8, and they have our number.
They beat us. Did they beat us every single time we played them this season? I think
don't remember.
I think that they won almost every single time. But basically, the difference between us and them, they have a .529 win percentage, and we have a .65. We got, that's. I mean, at least we're not the 7th seed because then we'd be playing Winnipeg, who also has our number. We always lose to Winnipeg also.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it varies every other season.
We beat them the one year, and then they beat us the next year.
Yeah, one year they beat us every time, and then the next year they beat us every time. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't like the way that they did it, but I don't have as big a problem with this one. I mean, because they're trying to get it back going again. The biggest question mark in my mind, and you may have said this or I didn't see it, is what are the rounds going to look like in terms of length?
I think it's best of 5.
Okay, I mean, and
for the play-in,
it's in one of 2 cities.
I think for the play-in, it's best of 5, and then it goes back to best of 7. I think is what's going to happen, like normal.
Right
after. Because then it would basically be just a 16-team playoff because the 4 teams, it would just be the normal playoffs, which I don't know why there's a play. I mean, why there's a plan.
Some of this, I'll say, just frankly, is jaded in my mind off of team perspective. When I'm a Predators fan talking about this, the Predators, to me, underachieved this season. We did change coaches midstream. And went back
into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, we got back into the playoff push. I mean, the jury's still out on our new coach because he had, I'm going to guess, 20 games before everything stopped. I like seeing what some of the things that have happened. We, once again, I mean, since our Stanley Cup Finals year, we've had at least 2 key injuries every year. It didn't help that, Dickwad Corey Perry, screw you, fucker,
took out
Pardon my
Ryan
language.
Ellis for
Just
weeks.
decides to hurt another one of our players during the Winter Classic,
Yeah,
no
thank
less.
God he should have gotten suspended. This is what I think the NHL should do. I've said this so many times. However long the player you injure is out, that's how long you have to stay out.
I agree with
Corey
that.
Perry was out he got suspended 3 games. Ryan Ellis was out for a month. Was it a month and a half? I think it was a long time.
It was like 6 weeks.
He had a
7
major
weeks. Yeah.
head injury because Perry cheap shotted him.
But anyway,
In
so
the first 5 minutes of the game too is
I
ridiculous.
mean, the Predators they've underachieved in my mind for the season for certain reasons, and not the least of which is Rene dropped off a cliff. I'm not going to say every game was bad. I mean, it's clear to me, which I think is the right move. The new coach has been. I mean, Laviolette was going this way, but I thought it was a little too slow. I feel like the new coach has said enough. Saros is at least our every other game starter.
The problem is Saros didn't improve substantially like he should have this year.
Well, I think in his case he needs reps to see if he actually did. So it'll be interesting to see if, assuming a natural restart to the next season, it'll be interesting to see if Saros comes out as he's playing 75% of the games and not Rene. I mean, because Rene, I think next year's the last year of his 7-year deal. So the inclination has been Saros is the heir apparent, which I would assume as long as he has a good year next year. I think David Poyle, the GM, set up Saros' 3-year deal so that next year's year 2, and if he has a great year next year as a more regular starter, he will extend him. The only question marks with Saros have ever been is his size. He's 6 inches shorter than Rene and smaller, clearly. He's a bit more nimble, but he also, one of Rene's strengths has always been he is more than willing to come out of goal and make passes, and is a very adept passer, and he even showed how his stick work scoring a goal earlier this year, which apparently was always a goal of his, so good job. Saros, that's not his strength. He can do it, but he's more average in that regard. So now they've really tried to draft some goalies and bring some along in Milwaukee, but we'll see. But
hopefully one of them turns out to be a stud.
From the playoff format, I really think with hockey especially, I've said this before, like in casual conversations, that I think home ice advantage is overrated in hockey. Hockey seems to be the most immune to home ice noise and traditions and whatnot. And, you can say, oh, well, octopus on the ice in Detroit, same as the catfish on the ice in Nashville. That doesn't matter to players. They're like, that's cute and quaint. They're like, whatever. So I think home ice is overrated. I never panic when the Predators are in a playoff series and they lose 1 of 2 in the first 2 at home or something like that, because it's like winning a game on the road, it's probably a little tougher, but I mean, honestly, if you were to say, look, it's the Stanley Cup Finals, I'm going to make up 2 teams. It's Edmonton versus the Islanders. And Edmonton's got to go to New York and win, a game 3 or 4 to get their edge back. Versus if you said it's the pre-tear-down Golden State Warriors, or even the Lakers now. It's the Lakers now against Milwaukee. And Milwaukee lost one of their first 2 games at home in the finals. They got to go to LA and win a game. That, to me, is infinitely tougher than Edmonton icing into the Islanders' home stadium. Probably Nassau's Fighting Insurance Sales, Coliseum, and winning a game there. I don't think it's near as tough. I think it's tougher. It'd be tougher to go win a World Series road game in baseball. What is baseball, you say? What is this foreign sport? We'll see if that comes back.
Yeah. The only thing I don't understand about this play-in tournament is why did the 11 and 12 seeds get a shot to get in the playoffs? They're not even close.
I agree with that. It should have been 10.
It should have been.
The 9 and 10 are like a point barely, or 2 away.
Yeah, so this is the winning percentages of the 7, 8, 9, and 10 in the Western Conference. Vancouver Canucks, the 7 seed, .65. Calgary Flames, 8 seed, .64. Winnipeg Jets, 9 seed, .63. Minnesota Wild, 10 seed, .558. And then it drops off in the 11 seed. The Coyotes are .529.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's...
And they'll probably beat us in a best of 5, 5-1, 6-2, 4-0. So, hopefully not, but we'll see. One thing I was going to go back to the NBA, so just to give you an idea, of where the Grizzlies would be if we did World Cup snake format. The top team by record in our group, we'd be Group C. Toronto would be the top team. It'd be Toronto, Denver, Indiana, Grizzlies, and Sacramento. We would not have the Pelicans.
We could get out of that, but they wouldn't put us in that. They wouldn't put us in that because then the Grizzlies would get through and the Pelicans wouldn't.
Well, it's funny you say that. So here's the Pelicans group that they'd be in. They'd be in Group B with the Lakers, the Jazz, the Rockets, the Nets, and the Pelicans. I would love to see New Orleans in that group.
And get smoked every game.
They would not come out of that group because I think even if the Lakers would be a given, even if the Jazz didn't win that second place, the Rockets would.
Exactly.
Because the Rockets would free them to death.
I mean, Harden turns it on in the playoffs. He's a playoff performer.
And you're really going to see how well that Houston experiment goes
in the playoffs. It might implode on
these
itself.
Playoffs. Well, the prevailing thought is that it was working in the beginning because it was throwing so many teams off. And then that style is so cardio, I'll call it, for them to have to run. They were wearing down is what people were thinking. Well, now they will have had 4 months off. And they're only going to have to do it for a month and a half if you assume they take it all the way to a title. I mean, hell, Houston could at least make noise in this play, and it's neutral site.
I just think that having your tallest player on the floor being 6'8" is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
and he's not even playing center.
In college, you can get away with it.
Yeah,
the
Tigers have had plenty of 6'8" centers, but
yeah.
But they weren't even playing. Robert Covington was the tallest player at 6'8", and he was at power forward. PJ Tucker is 6'6" playing center.
But I would say
absolutely ridiculous.
I would love to watch Group D games: Clippers, Celtics, Sixers, Mavs, Spurs.
That would be the best group. That would be the group of death.
Well, because if you're there would be some NBA guy who'd be yelling back at Stephen A. Smith, "I think the Spurs can take the 2 in that group. I think they can beat all these teams because of Popovich." It's like, no, they really can't.
They might beat the Sixers and the Magic.
Okay. They're not in with the Magic. They're in with the Mavs.
Oh, the Mavs, yeah. Never mind.
They're not. They're going to. So you would be saying, because in that format, I would figure they'd be playing 8 games apiece. The winner would probably be 7-1 type record. Your second place would have to at least be 5-3. Where are they getting 5 wins?
Exactly.
Against the Clippers twice, the Celtics twice, the Sixers twice, and the Mavs twice.
They might beat the Sixers one time.
I bet they'd win 2 games max.
Yeah, and they might beat the Mavericks one time because Luka misses a bunch of shots.
They wouldn't beat the Clippers either.
They wouldn't beat the Clippers.
Because Kawhi would want to stick it to Popovich.
They might get close to the Celtics one time, but not beat them, and then they'd get blown out the second time because Brad Stevens would say, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And that group has some great coaches in it.
Yeah.
With Popovich and Stevens.
I mean, I will say I'm glad this won't be the format because the Grizzlies have trouble with every one of these teams. I mean, for one, Toronto, Marc Gasol's on that team. Denver always seems to give us trouble. Of course, they wouldn't be playing in the mile-high atmosphere. But Indiana and Sacramento, for some reason, we always want to gack against those guys. Anyway, moving on. So,
all right, I think that's it for our sports section for now.
Okay.
If you want to lead into.
Let's go into the Arnold verse. How about that? We're still there. That's right. The 2 of you who are listening, which one of them's us. So we have a double dose this week. So we'll try to get through it quick. Because we're already a long time here. But since we've taken so long between podcasts, I was like, we're going to do 2 in 1. So you get 2 for the price of 0. So first up, that classic from the, ass edge of the Cold War, Red freaking Heat. I mean, USSR, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jim Belushi. And surprisingly, and I knew this, I'll say I saw this movie in the theater when I was a wee bit younger than Carson is now. Carson's 16, almost 17. So it came out in June of 1988. My older sister, is about 5 years older than I was, or I am, not was, am. She was visiting with my mom and I. My sister was visiting the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Yeah, she made it a year and then came home. Go Vols. And my uncle lives up in that area, so I was basically stashed at his house while they went and did college. She was getting her dorm assignment, all that stuff. It wasn't a visit. She was about to go there. So one day my uncle says, "Do you want to go see a movie?" He's like, "I'll drop you off. I got to work." He was a real estate guy. I was like, "Sure." I didn't even know what was on. He took me to like an 8-screen movie theater, which was at the time, that was like a multiplex. And I realized, oh my gosh, Red Heat's on. It was rated R, so since it was in Knoxville, that's when they still cared how old you were to buy an R-rated ticket. So my uncle had to go up and buy the ticket, but they didn't care. So he dropped me off. I went and saw Red Heat. And I mean, at the time even, there were a lot of actors in it that I look back on now and I'm like, wow, there were some decent names in that movie who at the time they had been in things, but they weren't as big as they ever got.
Or are now.
Yeah, which was kind of, it was like, okay. And it was directed by Walter Hill, who famously or infamously, depending on how you look at it, directed 48 Hours, another 48 Hours. He's directed some other big movies, and he's always was known for kind of his Western style of shooting movies, and just a lot of actors seem to want to work with him on projects, which, okay, there's something to be said for that. But, some of the other names in that movie, Jim Belushi was big as being the brother of John Belushi. He had several cups of coffee in the 80s and 90s with movies. Peter Boyle was in it. Peter Boyle was, Everybody Loves Raymond, the dad. He was the monster in Young Frankenstein. He's been in a bunch of things. Lawrence Fishburne.
He's a
before
huge
I'd
name
never
now.
seen. I now realize he was in King of New York before this, and a few others with small parts. But yeah, we're talking about Morpheus, all kinds of key parts he's been in over the years.
Other than Schwarzenegger, he's probably the biggest name from this movie, but he wasn't at the time.
Right. And Gina Gershon. She's had some legendary scenes where you might see more of her than you do in Red Heat. Let's just put it that way. But has been in, a lot of different movies. She was in Cocktail before this with Tom Cruise, but, she's been in a bunch of movies since then. So, yeah, it's just some names in there that you're like, oh, okay, and Brian James in there. Some people may not know who that is by name. He's also been in parts in 48 Hours and another 48 Hours. He was Kehoe, which in the first one he was a good guy, and the second one he turns into a bad guy. Spoiler alert. To me, as soon as I saw his face, I knew him because he's in Blade Runner, which is my number one movie in the Pantheon. Shout out to Charlie McGowan with that one. So, yeah, just a lot of people in that movie that I sort of kind of forgot about that. What's that?
There's also that guy from The Walking Dead.
Oh, yes.
The guy who plays Otis.
Ends up playing Otis.
A small part, but still remembered because he got shot in the leg by
Shane. Savagely shoots him in the leg, so he can run away. So the quick synopsis of the movie, if you haven't seen it, a mutually uneasy, and this is from IMDb.com, a mutually uneasy alliance is formed between the stern Captain Ivan Danko of the Moscow police and his American equivalent, the Chicago detective Art Ridzik, classic name, when the latter captures Victor Rostavili. He just goes by Rasta through the movie. They call him Rostavili like once. A dangerous Georgian drug kingpin, and no, I don't mean from Macon, Georgia. I mean from Georgia and Russia. Yeah, with his partner murdered by Victor's hands, Ivan lands in Chicago to extradite the crime lord back to Russia. However, when he manages to escape, a frenzied chase in the bustling downtown will begin. In the end, to bring down the ruthless criminal are the two reluctant comrades who are worlds apart, willing to put their differences aside. I'll add, you be the judge. Yeah. So basically, yeah, I mean, it's a buddy cop movie when buddy cop movies were still a burgeoning enterprise. I mean, some people actually look to 48 Hours and say that was like the first big buddy cop movie, even though it's really a convict and a cop, but kind of a buddy
Close
movie.
enough.
If you look at movies like Running Scared from '86 and stuff like that, I mean, that's truly a buddy cop movie, and ironically also set in Chicago. But yeah, I mean, it's a buddy cop movie. They become friends over time. The thing that struck me that I mentioned to Carson too is that even watching it again is that by this time, I mean, we're in 1988. Schwarzenegger's had a few years now of filming this kind of genre of action movies. You can tell there's an evolution to he gets comic timing at least slightly better. I'm not going to ever say he's a great comic actor, but he at least gets it a little bit more. There's a little bit more facial reaction that kind of gets the jokes better and stuff like that. He's not as hammy with them.
Well,
but
I think
he's also good with Belushi as a foil.
Yeah, I think that the presence of Belushi made the comedy in this movie by far and away the best of any Schwarzenegger movie we've seen, or probably ever will see.
Well, yeah, because Belushi was a trained comic. I mean, he had done SNL. He had done a lot of different things, and you can tell he knows how to set it up.
And Schwarzenegger reacted. Their interactions are really good comedically in this movie, I think. I think they play well off each other.
The script is
much better than
better
other
than
movies.
some of the other movies we've seen. I mean, it sets things up better. So I would not be surprised if somebody said Belushi did some ad libs and Schwarzenegger might have looked at him funny the first take and then figured out what to say. But yeah, I mean, Belushi clearly has the knack for it. I mean, so there's moments where you're expecting a certain kind of joke and he throws out a different kind of joke and you're like, oh, that's amusing because it's funny, but it's not what I was expecting. So, yeah. So for the categories, which I need to pull those up.
Come on, you got to be prepared.
Yeah, I know. I was not as prepared
As the host,
for this one.
I'm extremely prepared always.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. Okay, so
The first one is best scene.
okay, good. Thank
So,
you. You had it. What's
yeah,
the best
I have-
scene?
My favorite scene was the one where it's a short one, the one where Ridzik is going inside somewhere to get food and coffee and something, and the guy comes up to Schwarzenegger sitting in the car, and he tells Schwarzenegger to pay him or he's going to beat the car with his
Baseball bat.
Yeah, his Pete Rose is what
Yeah,
he
that's
says.
right.
And Schwarzenegger says, "Do you know Miranda?" Speaking of
talking about
Miranda
Miranda
rights.
rights,
And the
yeah.
guy says, "No, never heard of the broad." And Schwarzenegger slams his head against the car window.
Yeah,
And
punches him.
and basically knocks him out. And then Belushi comes back out and he's like, "Oh, what's this guy doing? Everything all right?" Schwarzenegger says, "Yeah." Belushi's like, "Well, then what's the guy doing outside, knocked out outside the car?" He's like, "He lives there."
Yeah.
It's one of the better. It's one
It's
of
a
the
very
better.
good deadpan
Yeah,
moment.
it was a good comedic exchange.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, to me, the best scene in the movie has always been, and it feels like it takes longer to get there than it actually is, but the best scene in the movie to me is the bus chase bash up scene at the end. I mean, it's starting with the point when they get to the bus station and they're like, okay, you go cover the front, I'll cover the back, or however it goes. And Schwarzenegger ends up pointing the gun at Belushi. He's like, I have my orders, and it's all the way through to the end when, and they do the to me, the funniest line that I cracked up to when I first saw it was, and this is one of those points when, again, I was expecting a certain line, and I got a different one, slightly different, but it was funnier, was when they play chicken with the buses, and Ross's bus gets hit by a train, but he comes running out. Or not running out, he's lumbering out. And Schwarzenegger sees him, and he's like, I'll take care of this. and he looks at Belushi, and I'm expecting Belushi to be like, "No way, I'm going to back you up," and he goes, "I give up. This whole thing is very Russian." So I would totally be like, "You got it, bud," and that's the reaction he has. So
that's all.
That's why to me it's the best scene. All right, next up, worst acting.
The worst actor. I'll let you go first on this one.
To me, the worst actor, and he's in another 48 Hours and kind of a bit part two, and it works better in my mind in that movie. What he does, he's not exactly the same character, but he's a bad guy, is the guy who plays Abdul Elijah, the criminal kingpin in jail.
Oh, the blind guy?
Yeah, and he's just got this, he's trying to put on this Dolomite jive turkey, you're a jive turkey kind of vibe, and it's like it just doesn't work for me. He's like way over the top with like what are you doing? You trying to make me compromise my principles. It's like, why don't you just talk normal? I mean, take that down. You're at a 10 to a line from Boiler Room. You're at a 10. We could use you at a 2. How about that? It's fine.
It's supposed to be this grounded, like, super, like, cult leader. Not cult leader, but, like, I don't know.
Well, if that guy was the leader of my gang, I'd frag his ass. He's way too... what are you, Henry David Thoreau? Are you writing Walden from prison? Just be a gang lord and be like, I'm not telling you shit, cop. Get out of here.
Yeah, he had to be a special kind of gang lord.
Yeah. Okay.
One that people look up to.
So who's your worst
My
actor?
favorite bit of overacting in this movie is the random hooker that starts following Schwarzenegger in the hotel during a shootout. Schwarzenegger comes in,
being loud about it, too.
Schwarzenegger comes in, shoots like 7 guys by himself, and this hooker has a random gun, and she shoots somebody, and then she's like, "Where are you going? Where are you going? I need to follow you. I'm gonna follow you." The guy with the gun who just shot 7
I'd have
people.
shot her myself. Just to shut her up.
She almost got him shot. I mean, that was my favorite bit of overacting in the movie. Not a huge part, not a huge
Best
name,
thing about the movie.
My best thing about the movie, I kind of hit on this earlier, was the comedic exchanges between Schwarzenegger and Belushi.
Yeah.
I thought those were really actually good. Like it was definitely the best comedy out of any Schwarzenegger movie, and even not just relative to Schwarzenegger movies, it was actually just good. Like it was actually written well and performed well between the two.
Well, to me, we're gonna get in the next movie to the best Schwarzenegger one-liner to me ever in one of the movies, but
I'll be back.
No, it's not that. Don't
Get
even
out.
Stop. No, it's not that. So
It's definitely
the best
Get Out.
thing. No, it's not. The best thing about the movie, about this movie to me was just I loved what I agree with what you said. The stylistic way that the movie flows. It's almost like it's not exactly what I expected. And that's kind of the way Walter Hill movies that I've seen over the years kind of go. 48 Hours is the same thing. It's like when I first watch it, I expect it to go one way, and it kind of veers a little bit off, but it's still within the ballpark, which I think is nice because it doesn't completely take me out of it, that I'm in this story, but it reminds me that it's like, okay, it's more like real life. It doesn't have to go.
It's like a baby
one
Tarantino.
of one ways. Yeah.
Because Tarantino just kind of completely just trashes everything and sends you in a completely different direction.
Right. Okay, so worst thing about the movie, I'll say, is that I wouldn't have known at the time, my age, and also just because of the way that the world was then. The worst thing about the movie is that there's still too many tropes that are like, okay, America versus the USSR, and believe me, growing up in the 80s, I remember all the post-apocalyptic movies and all the Reagan things and all the Gorbachev things. And there were times in the early and mid-'80s when I, as a kid, felt like, okay, shit could actually happen. By 1988, it did not feel that way. It didn't feel as standoffish as the movie tries to make it.
Well, I think that's why the movie was allowed to happen the way it was, because it wasn't
right
actually as bad.
No,
as
I get it.
I know what they were going for, and
I thought it was good that it's, it seems like there's some actual, like, okay, they didn't just say, well, look, we're going to film this in Atlanta, but this is supposed to be Moscow. It's in Moscow.
Yeah, there's part of it that was actually in the Red Square in Moscow.
Yeah, I mean, and I enjoyed that. But then it's like, when they bring the report up in Moscow and they're like, well, they found Rasta in Chicago. And the guy's like, oh, Chicago. And he's like,
yeah.
Like, oh, it's still gangster land. Now, I say that with a backdrop of my older sister went to Switzerland with my dad and my stepmom in the probably would have been a couple years before that. And she told me that people in Switzerland thought that people in America still farmed by like horse and mule and pull carts and stuff like that. Like, okay, that kind of is. I could see maybe there's some of that went on then. I think in these days it's kind of like the internet, social media, all that stuff is a thing of the past. People can see what everything looks like. Yeah. Anyway, for you, what was it?
The worst thing about the movie for me was that we don't get as many awkward Schwarzenegger one-liners. That's really, it hurts me to not see them.
Is that also your most memorable thing?
No. It could have been. It could have been both just because of how sad I was that there weren't as many.
Yeah. I know you enjoy those. Yeah. What is your most memorable moment?
The most memorable thing for me was kind of your worst thing about the movie. I noticed that this movie really hit on the capitalism versus communism debate. And the characters of Belushi and Schwarzenegger kind of like they both stand for one, and they both definitely stick to their thing, because the entire movie Belushi's trying to convince Schwarzenegger how great capitalism is, and he's very firm in his belief that communism is the best. So I think at least they stick to their guns well. So
I mean, to me the most memorable thing is, it's kind of what you were saying earlier about the comedy. It's the off of one another. They play off one another pretty well.
It seems like they have pretty good chemistry.
I agree. So movie rating, scale of 4 stars.
I gave it a 3 out of 4 because I think it's a good buddy cop movie and the comedy plays well.
Yeah, I also gave it a 3 out of 4. I mean, I think it's good. I mean, it's a really solid movie.
Not perfect by any means, but the action sequences are there. They're pretty well done. The story is written pretty well. Like we've talked about a lot of times, the comedy is there.
Right. So. And critic reviews were not horrible. They don't savage it generally. The Metascore
is 67%.
Yeah, the Metascore is from Metacritic.com. His average is 61. Roger Ebert, good job, Raj. His comment was, "This film is punctuated by violence, a great deal of violence, although most of it is exaggerated comic book style instead of being truly gruesome. Walking that fine line is a specialty of Hill, Walter Hill, who once simulated the sound of a fist on a chin by making tape recordings of ping pong paddles slapping leather sofas." Yeah, there's some loud punch sounds and stuff like that.
And you have your normal gang, bad guys die and they fall backwards with their arms up. So.
Yeah. So the most got 60 or above. There was a 10 in there. Hal Henson of the Washington Post said, "Red Heat is poorly or even indifferently made. It's a joyless exercise, and too much angry resignation seeps in for it to be very funny or very entertaining." Wow. Somebody pissed in his Wheaties.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So, moving on. Film number 2 for tonight. And we're getting near the bottom of the list. So,
which is the best ones.
Yeah.
So, we're
now 2 years ahead of Red Heat. Total Recall. Carson had seen this one once before, but he didn't remember all of it. So, it was good for a refresher. So,
I remember certain little tidbits that kind of changed the movie a little bit.
So this came out 1st of June, 1990. I remember seeing this one in the theater here in Memphis with my cousin, Brad, and liking it then, but not following everything then. It was just kind of like, okay, what's reality and what's not? And apparently that was part of the whole intent of director Paul Verhoeven, who has done things like Basic Instinct. He also did Showgirls, which is rated as one of the worst 5 or 10 movies of all time. But he did Starship Troopers. Verhoeven has a very distinct style of movies. And it's very he's all his own. He did RoboCop, which was a huge hit in the 80s. Before this was also like a coming out party for Sharon Stone as an actress. She'd been in movies before this, but after this, she got Basic Instinct with, again, Paul Verhoeven. And from there, her career just took off. So, I mean, you have other guys in it who are that guy. Rachel Ticotin's been in a few movies. Ronnie Cox, classic good/bad guy in the 80s, 90s. Also, apparently a very accomplished musician. And was in Deliverance. So that's always a stamp of a mark of pride for him, which I found out was his first ever feature film, which is shocking when you see it. Michael Ironside was in it. So many people hear Michael Ironside and like, who? I'm like, how do you not know Jester from Top Gun? That's his apex. But he was a great presence in this movie.
I read a review about this movie that said that Michael Ironside gave the best performance out of any cast member in this movie.
He's good. He's very over the top. But he's in a good way.
Somebody thought that he played it really, really well. I thought that he was good in this movie.
Well, he was very angry and very incensed at the whole thing. But and also, shout out to Dean Norris in this movie. Who would ever have seen that and thought Dean Norris, one of the bar mutants, Tony, would turn out to be Agent Hank Schrader from Breaking Bad? And also, shout out to him too, because it's probably around the same time he had a bit part in The Firm, filmed here in Memphis. He's one of the two henchmen of The Firm, which is crazy. When you see him in this movie, it's like, if you know what Dean Norris would look like and hear his voice, you'd be like, okay, I know that guy. But if you didn't really have seen anything of him, you wouldn't recognize him. You see him in The Firm, he looks like Hank Schrader. I mean, it looks like he hasn't aged a day when he becomes Hank Schrader in Breaking Bad. So, good job on you, Dean. So the quick synopsis from IMDb.com. Douglas Quaid is haunted by a recurring dream about a journey to Mars. He hopes to find out more about this dream and buys a holiday at Recall Incorporated, where they sell implanted memories. But something goes wrong with the memory implantation, and he remembers being a secret agent fighting against the evil Mars administrator, Cohagen. Now the story really begins, and it's a roller coaster ride until the massive end of the movie. So, Carson, impressions?
Probably the best written movie we've seen out of all the Schwarzenegger ones, like story-wise.
And he had a big personal hand in getting it made.
Yeah.
This is a passion project of his.
I think that the direction was pretty good for this movie, honestly. I think that the overall movie was really good.
And it's based off of a short story by famed sci-fi author Philip K. Dick called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, who also wrote the story that became Blade Runner, To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. So, that's a big credit to that film.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a remake that I almost didn't mention of Total Recall with, God bless him, Colin Farrell, and a little bit of tie to Breaking Bad. Bryan Cranston plays Cohagen. It's a totally different way that they do it, and I watched it. If I had never seen the original Total Recall, I would have been entertained by that remake, but it wasn't a great movie. But having seen the original, I'm like, no, I won't watch that one again.
Yeah, I
ever.
accidentally ended up reading the reviews for the 2012 one, and they are not very friendly.
No, it got panned.
Not like the one for the 1990 one, which has really good reviews, actually.
Yeah, from a rating perspective, too, I'll also say that the original rating from I can't remember the agency that does it, I should. It originally got an X rating, not an R, for Total Recall, because the violence was considered so grisly.
Head explosions.
Yeah, it was considered so grisly, and it was one of the last films to be given an X rating. It was before NC-17 became a rating. But they trimmed the violence, and different camera angles were used in some of the over-the-top scenes that dropped it back to an R.
Yeah, and you really only get NC-17 if you have, porn in your movie.
Yep.
That's really the only way to get NC-17, because violence is kind of just past the the depths of.
It has an 82% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Now, one thing that's interesting, Metacritic gave this a 57% lower than Red Heat.
Yeah.
Which Metacritic is relatively low compared to Rotten Tomatoes 82 and IMDb 7.5 out of 10.
There's a lot of high ratings for it, though. I mean, back to Roger Ebert gave it an 88 out of 100. One of the most complex and visually interesting science fiction movies in a long time. And then Owen, I'm going to mispronounce this, Gleiberman from Entertainment Weekly gave it an 83, and it starts out as mind-bending futuristic satire and then turns relentless. It becomes a violent post-punk version of an Indiana Jones cliffhanger. I like the way he puts that. Now, let's go to our man Jay Scott in the Globe and Mail in Toronto. A 12. Guilty of gross melodrama, as he puts it, and innocent of sophistication. Guilty of being dumber than WWF wrestling, which, rest in peace, WWF, and innocent of hypocrisy about its cartoon violence. He likes the word innocent, apparently.
That's just... I don't think he really watched the movie then, because innocent of sophistication, this movie... honestly, is probably the most sophisticated written Schwarzenegger movie. The plot is actually very complex when you look at it. When you look at the two sides, like the debate, the eternal raging debate over Total Recall.
Yep. I mean, TV Guide magazine gave it a 40, but said, "Let's not mince words. This film should be called Total Reject." Zing! Gotcha.
Wow, what a great! That's such a great comment.
Exactly.
He really got Schwarzenegger there. He caught him good.
Exactly. I'm sure he felt burned. Yeah. It's like, do you smell that? Oh, that's you, because you just got burned by TV Guide. And where's TV Guide these days? Oh, sorry. You're in the zero pile. Best scene.
My favorite, I think the best scene was when the guy shows up and says that he's from Recall. Like, the doctor.
That's a great one.
And basically, and then Sharon Stone shows back up. And it's like, they're trying to... it depends... The way you look at this scene depends on which side you take. Now, personally, I go on the implant side. The entire second half of the movie is...
Well, it's more like implant. The last 75%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
Basically, so the second part of the movie, because there's two parts, it's basically...
Well, because let me explain. Yeah. What he's referring to is that fan theory is split about whether this movie... From the time he gets in the chair at Recall and gets knocked out, from then on, is it the implant in his brain? Is that the whole rest of the movie? Because, so-and-so at Recall tells him, it will be as real as any memory in your brain, Doug. Or is the movie actually happening? Is it reality? And this is all this big, to do... this deep-seated plan that he and Cohagen put together? Or is it all just an implant? Mm-hmm. Because it goes all the way through the high level of what got described to him with the secret agent part of his mind trip. And when you see certain Easter egg things at Recall...
It points to both sides.
Look, we're doing alien artifacts now. You see part of the power plant that melts the core of the planet in there. And you see the picture of Rachel Ticotin's character, and it looks exactly like her in the way he picked her. And there's just things in there that would make you go, well, sure, it's an implant. He's acting all this out now. So Carson subscribes to it's an implant.
Which side do you tend to fall on?
I mean, for years, I just thought it was real acting out. I would tend toward it's an implant. Just because there's too many things that are just wonky about the plan itself that, I mean, granted, every movie has something that you could quibble about. There's nitpicks. I just feel like this is one where if it was intended a certain way, it truly is, there's no way it could play out like that in reality. Like he would be dead, or the plan would fall apart. I mean, just different things that would have happened that are not, it shouldn't have gone that way. But because it's in his mind, because
he can kind of move his way around the story.
Right.
Yeah, so, and also because you told me that the director came out and said that he is on the implant side.
Well, that's
and
what I'd
directed
heard.
it, if he directed it, like saying that it's on that side, then I think that it falls more to the implant side.
Right. I mean, I could have misheard, but that's yeah.
And I think there's, like you said, there's just too many clues that lead that instead of going towards the realistic side, go towards the implant side, like the blue skies at the end, and the guy in the recall office says, "Oh, blue skies on Mars. Don't see that one very often."
Yeah.
And the girl, like you said, she looks exactly like the girl that was created by Schwarzenegger.
Which, interestingly enough, one of my favorite musical artists in the '90s, Matthew Sweet, did an album. The album was titled "Blue Sky on Mars." I think it's based off of that. But anyway, best scene. Well, you said that already.
Yeah.
Best scene to me was I love the scene when I love the whole sequence at Recall, but especially when he wakes up and he's like screaming, "You blew my cover," and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a short little blip, but the way, I mean, when he wakes up, it's, to me, the best part of seeing Schwarzenegger's acting, I'll say. And it's not like he's having to do a whole lot with it. But when he breaks his arm out of the Velcro and immediately grabs the guy's throat, and he's got the most intense look on his face and says, "My name is not Quaid." I mean, if I saw somebody look at me like that, I'd be like, "I'm dead.
Yeah.
This guy's
I'm
going
not
to kill
surviving.
me." Yeah. So he's got a very intense look on his face.
He did it well there.
Yeah. So worst acting.
You can go
There are
first.
categories. There's a cadre of people in this one.
You can go first.
Oh, you're gonna let me go first,
yeah,
huh?
Congrats.
Worst acting. Where do I start? If I only have to pick one, I would say the worst acting in the movie is Benny the cab driver. I mean, he's got his moments where it's like, okay, he's funny and he's goofy, but what does it for me every time is when they find out that he's really working for Cohagen. And he's in the giant drill, and he's yelling at them, "I'm coming for you, baby!" And it's so cheesy and goofy. I know it fits with the movie, and it's just the acting I enjoy the least. I'll put it that way. It may not be the worst acting, but it's the acting I enjoy the least.
The reason why you don't like him is basically the same reason why you didn't like Abdul Elijah's character over the top too much. It fits, but it doesn't. He goes beyond what would fit in the spot.
Yeah, he doesn't need to go for it as hard.
Because I would also say Benny the cab driver.
Oh, okay.
Just because
We agree.
He's the entire time. It's always, there's never a moment where he's down. His energy is down.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would have liked the character more if he was up the entire time. But then when he turns on him, when they shoot Quato,
he drops down.
Yeah, he drops all the way. No, I like he drops way down, and he just becomes a completely different person.
I mean, all that said, if he's the low bar in that movie, he clears the bar for a lot of bad acting in a lot of other movies. There's other movies we've watched in this where there's clearly worse actors than him.
Yeah. I don't think his
he just
acting
happens
is
to be with
bad.
a good group.
I don't think his acting was necessarily terrible or bad. I think it just doesn't fit. I think the fit was the problem in the movie.
So, best thing about the movie?
The best thing, let's see, what did I say? I said that the plot is written so well that it sparked an internal debate over what is actually happening in the movie.
Right.
I think that it's just, it's hard to write something so well. Because you see all these movies that are acclaimed as like the best movies of all time. They have fans debating over conspiracy theories constantly. And this movie has that. People who have watched this movie debate over what is actually happening in the plot. I think that is the sign of a good movie. When you have people who are devoted to figuring out what's actually happening, that's when you have a good movie or a good show, when you have people like that.
Best thing, and I agree. Best thing about the movie to me, there are so many just funny, memorable, whatever, facial expressions in this movie. There are so many intense faces in this movie. I mean, Ronnie Cox does it. Michael Ironside does it. Schwarzenegger does it. almost. I mean, Sharon Stone has a couple of them. There's so many people with just these intense facial expressions that are just so. They're interesting, but they're funny in a good way. I just look at them like, wow, that person is really going for it here. They really look pissed.
They're lucky that it works in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
And if you watch any other Verhoeven movie and want to see why he's considered, like, he's got a lot of really good stuff. But if you want to see over the top Verhoeven, like facial expressions, but to times 100, watch Starship Troopers. That movie is meant to be so. It's like a parody of itself, and you watch some of that, and it's. I don't know if he meant. Honestly, I don't know if he meant it to be truly serious, but there is so much just over the topness in that movie that I watch, and I'm just like, okay, I want to watch it. It's very interesting, but man, it is so expressively funny to watch it. And of course, Ironside's in that movie too, and he's funny in that movie because he's intense and he's funny. Anyway,
another great thing about this movie, one of the things that you pointed out to me as one of your favorite parts of the movie was when Ironside is holding on, Richter is holding on to the side of the elevator, and then his arms get just chopped off by the top, and Schwarzenegger drops the "See you at the party, Richter" line at like Richter had dropped to him.
That's
earlier in the movie.
line I was referencing earlier.
Yeah.
That's his best one-liner.
It's
"See you at the party, Richter." As he's breathing hard and just throws the arms over.
Yeah, just as Richter is falling out of the sky.
Worst thing about the movie.
I said, and this is actually a good thing, but also a bad thing at the same time. I kind of hit on this earlier. It's hard to figure out what's happening in the movie. It's because it is a complex. I think it's a pretty complexly written script, but that's a good thing and a bad thing, because it turns some people off to the movie because they don't want to try and think about what's actually happening. But it's also a great thing because it means that you have a good script, a well-written script. So
right.
It's a good and bad thing.
I mean, worst thing about the movie to me is Venusville, and it's a tech thing. It's like if Venusville is this big Sector G or whatever they call it, and it's supposed to be this. I think they were going for a red light district of Paris type stuff, Amsterdam look. It looks like you could walk it in 2 minutes. So why do you need a cab to Venusville? And why do you need a cab to drive you through Venusville? I mean, at least make it feel like, okay, this is a big labyrinth of horror bars and gambling and whatever else it's supposed to be. The Deuce, area of
I think
New
it's
York
supposed
City.
to be. I think that the thing is, relative to the other places on Mars, it's supposed to be big, but a bunch of other places
feels
like
small.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there would be limitations to how big you can build a colony on Mars.
Right.
But still, I agree. Like it looks small, and it's supposed to be like this huge crap hole. It's supposed to be like the slums, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be like the bottom of the food chain. This is where the poor people live, but it feels lacking in size and like depth of like. There doesn't look to be a living area anywhere in there, but this is supposed to be where people live. It looks just like a bunch of like strip joints.
It's even the drive from the Hilton to Venusville. It's like
2 minutes. It's like those people.
Like, couldn't I have walked to this?
Yeah, and also, if this is supposed to be the slums, why are the rich people so close?
Yeah,
because the Marriott or like the Hilton is right there.
Right. Most memorable thing.
I said that. One thing I noticed is that this is supposed to be in 2084. That's where the plot is set. Nothing feels super futuristic, and I understand that this is back
30 years ago.
1990. Yeah.
This is pre like heavy CGI too.
Yeah.
There is
but
not
still,
a lot of CGI in this movie.
I said this to you, like the car looks like a piece of garbage, kind of.
Yeah.
And
the Johnny Cab.
Yeah. You'd think that they'd try to go for something really sleek if it's 2084 and they're trying to make this big tech dystopia, but it feels kind of everything feels kind of like a crap hole. You'd think that some places were supposed to feel like really cool and like, oh, they have the best stuff, but it feels like everybody has the same stuff. It feels like even the people in the slums have the same stuff as the people in the rich places.
Right.
Nothing feels futuristic.
I mean, to me, there's so many memorable things. I mean, I could throw honorable mentions. I'll say the special effects honorable mention. I mean, again, pre CGI and just the way they pulled off some of that stuff. It's just like I don't know how they did it. I mean,
Exploding
Quado.
heads.
How do you put a guy in a guy?
Yeah.
Basically Yoda in a guy's stomach, and none of that is CGI. That's all special effects. Like, okay, people today would probably be like, "What? I can't do that." Well, somebody did at some point.
Somebody pulled it off, and there's a bunch of people who are supposed to be like mutants, and they pull all of it off.
Right. I'm sure they went through hours of makeup, and it sucked, but whatever. So
they pulled it off well.
But the most memorable thing to me is the deaths. I mean,
exploding heads. I've said it like
exploding
15
heads,
times.
The bulging eyeballs.
Memorable.
I mean, there are some great death scenes in this movie. Richter getting his arms chopped off.
And then
I mean, it's
the potty Richter.
Yeah. There's just I mean, and I still laugh my ass off every time I see whatever that is, like a big metal rod that Schwarzenegger stuffs through a guy's head, and the guy falls over like he's fell out of a clown car.
Even in the good Schwarzenegger movies, you still have to have the terrible death scenes. Because I don't know, they saw. I'm sure they knew what people what actually happened when somebody got shot, and yet they still, in every Schwarzenegger movie, people have to flail their arms and fall backwards, or jump. They obviously jump. They're like, oh, and they flail backwards.
Yeah,
like
I agree. Another honorable mention was the blatant disregard for human life. Especially,
Forgot about that.
Especially,
when he
kudos
shoots.
to you, Michael Ironside. It doesn't matter if there's 50 people, 50 nuns, or 50 children in the way. You're shooting at Douglas Quaid. And it
he
doesn't
shot
matter.
the freaking glass dome and killed like 20 people because they got sucked out into the Mars.
Yeah, then tried to shoot the bigger dome.
Yeah,
'Cause apparently there's a small dome and a big dome.
And some guy said, no, don't shoot that. And he was like,
The dome
he
will
still
crack.
almost shot it. No, and then that...
And Ronnie Cox's disregard for fish life. He kicks over the
Yeah, he
aquarium.
For no
Way
reason.
to go, Bogomil.
Well, and back to Ironside just shooting the dome almost twice. That's one of the things that points to implant for me. Because you'd think as someone that high up in the government, I understand this is a crappy government on Mars, but still you'd think that they'd want to, because that would be a public relations mess.
Well,
Honestly,
he's mad because
yeah,
Quaid was sleeping with his wife.
yeah,
She's an agent too. See,
Supposedly.
that's the biggest to me. Well, not the biggest. That's one
their
of the,
relationship.
That's one of the big holes in the whole plot in general. To me, is that she clearly, obviously knows about what the scam is, if it's real or not. She knows what the scam is. She's written in as his wife to make sure the erasure took, as she tells him. Richter knows nothing about this.
Yeah.
He knows his wife is on assignment, but Cohagen says Richter goes hog wild, screwing up everything I spent a year planning. Wouldn't Richter have to know where his wife is? But I mean, maybe he knew where she was. But this is that guy.
I mean, she was only.
Wait
there
a
for
minute,
6
that was
weeks.
Hauser.
Yeah.
What? I mean,
It was. I guess the one argument, it was only 6 weeks. She says that it was all implanted 6 weeks ago. But
Well-
I think it's implant. There's no way. There's
Yeah.
too many holes. In
again, yeah, I agree.
I mean, there's holes in the implant theory that you can point out, but I think that there's more leverage on the side of implant.
So we've gone way long. What's your movie rating?
3.5 out of 4.
All right, I give it 3. So only because it's just there's certain nitpicks and plot holes I could knock it down. I was close to a 3.5, but I give it 3, which is still it's a strong 3.
This is why we need a 10 rating scale.
And if it was out
with
of 10, I'd give it
points-
an 8.
with point something. I'd give it Yeah, I would have given it an 8.5, which is slightly lower than a 3.5 out of 4.
Yeah, so exactly. Okay, so good. We got through that. If you listen even 5 minutes of this, thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. Our next series on the worst movies ever will be out of 10s.
Yes. We have 2 more Schwarzenegger movies to go, and they are T1 and T2. So next time we're going to watch Terminator, the first one. He's seen that one, but it's been a while on that. He's never seen T2.
I remember most of T1.
Yeah, it's not complicated. T2 is more complicated, but when you see it, you'll see why it's at least as good as, if not superior, to T1. And then after that, it goes off the rails. The whole franchise goes off the rails. Okay, so thank you for listening. Thanks for hosting, Carson. Great job.
Thanks for being on my show.
Very average.
Thanks for being on my show. Sports and then some.
Okay, I need a drink. I appreciate all you guys. Hopefully you're listening. Love you.
Goodbye.
Stay safe. Socially distance. Bye.